Florida is a special place. It's dotted with thousands of natural lakes, and there are other man-made lakes and other engineered waterworks. While they add beauty to the landscape, they also serve another very important function by protecting our waterways that Mother Nature has given us. These man-made lakes are designed to handle stormwater runoff, the water that picks up chemicals off roofs, pavement, and lawns when it rains. To keep those contaminants from polluting our lakes, rivers, and bays, these specially designed stormwater systems intercept and cleanse this rainwater before it flows to natural waterways. Think of them as sinks for pollutants. As a property owner or a homeowners association, you're responsible for the proper functioning and maintenance of your stormwater management system. In the next few minutes, we'll examine the 4 types of systems commonly used, their strong points and their weak points, and how you can make sure that they work properly. We'll also learn what kinds of plants are good and bad for your stormwater system. Before much of Florida became heavily developed, we didn't have stormwater runoff problems. More than half the state was covered by wetlands, areas that are wet for weeks or months at a time. So when it rained, up to half the water was naturally filtered by plants and absorbed into the ground, replenishing shallow and deep aquifers, while about 40% evaporated back into the atmosphere. As more and more solid surfaces like roads, sidewalks, driveways, and buildings were constructed, especially in these wetland areas, less rainfall replenished groundwater supplies or evaporated, and more water caused stormwater problems. In the past 30 years, homes and businesses have sprouted up in what had been wetland areas, floodplains associated with creeks, rivers, and other water bodies. The land was cheap, and for the most part, it was dry. Under current regulations, that development would not have occurred in the way it did. Wetlands act as nature's filter, cleansing impurities from water before it can pollute a stream, a river, or a lake. Wetlands also provide flood protection because they act like a sponge, holding water during times of heavy rain and slowly releasing it downstream. Developing those areas was like a surgeon removing the kidney from a patient. Pollutant-laden runoff rushed at ever greater velocities to foul our waterways. Traditionally, the stormwater problem was getting the water off as quickly as possible for flood protection. But this led to other unintended problems, including downstream flooding, increased erosion, deposition of sediment, declining water quality, loss of wildlife habitat, and loss of property value. Stormwater management systems like this pond act like sinks for pollutants, trapping them so they cannot pollute our waterways. In addition, when an area is developed today, wetlands are set aside and in many cases expanded or enhanced by the developer to mitigate or make up for the negative effects caused by changes to nature's drainage system. Properly designed and maintained stormwater systems like this one help prevent the problems associated with flooding, erosion, lowered water quality, and loss of property value and wildlife habitat. Dave Miracle is an engineer with the St. Johns River Water Management District in Jacksonville. Dave, what's the object of a stormwater system?
Well, Lynn, there's 2 main reasons that we have a stormwater system. The first is to get the water off of the driveways and lawns and roads in a controlled fashion into the stormwater system. Once it's there, it's released in a slow, controlled manner so that we don't flood anybody out downstream. The second reason we have a stormwater system is to capture and remove the pollutants that are commonly found in stormwater runoff before they can reach our downstream lakes and rivers.
Do all of the stormwater systems work the same?
No, they all work a little bit different. In fact, we have 4 different types of systems that we commonly see out there. The first is wet detention, which is what we're standing on right now. The second is retention systems. The third is swales, and the fourth is a filter system.
How do they work?
Well, for wet detention systems, the water flows into that wet detention system where it remains there for several days. During that time, pollutants have a chance to settle out before that water is discharged downstream. The second type of system, retention, is a normally dry basin, generally covered with some type of grass or sod. That'll fill up with water after the rain, and the water will percolate into the ground, removing the pollutants that way. Swales are a vegetated, almost like a ditch, except they're not as steep. They're generally wider and well maintained with vegetation, which makes them a little bit different from a ditch. The water passing over the swale has a chance to percolate into the ground before it can be released downstream. By percolating it into the ground, that removes the pollutants from the stormwater. And our fourth type of system is a filter system. There we have a perforated pipe surrounded by some type of sand or gravel. The water passing through that sand or gravel removes the pollutants before it can get downstream and discharge through the pipe.
So many of these types of systems look almost like natural ponds. Is it okay to build a dock or a bulkhead along the shoreline?
Well, if you do, I would contact us first. Generally, any type of structure like a dock or a bulkhead that's placed out into the water could reduce the design storage capacity of that system. So if somebody's contemplating building a dock or a bulkhead, they should contact us first before doing so, and we'll be glad to give them some guidance on setting that structure.
How about boating and fishing and water skiing and those kind of activities?
Well, I would be careful in those types of activities. Please remember that these systems are designed to capture and treat pollutants. So I would be careful swimming or boating in those types of stormwater lakes. As for fishing, I definitely wouldn't keep or eat any of the fish I catch. So in here it would be catch and release only.
That's a really good point. So if you're planning to fish, remember, catch and release only. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thanks, Lynn.
Now that we know why stormwater systems are built and how they work, the question is, how do we keep them working properly? Lee Ray, Cindy Pennington, and Jill Wild work for the St. Johns River Water Management District. Their job is to make sure that systems like this one are functioning properly. Jill, how difficult is it for a homeowner or a homeowners association to keep a stormwater system like this functioning the way it was designed?
It doesn't have to be difficult at all. In fact, the first step is quite simple. The first thing you want to do with any stormwater system is to make a thorough inspection, like Lee's doing. Inspect all pipes, inlet and outlet structures to make sure they're not blocked or clogged. At this overflow weir structure, Lee is inspecting it and clearing it of all obstructions.
One of the things we want to make sure that we can do is remove all types of dead limbs and leaves that could possibly block the structure and not allow the water to get through to it. One of the things you can do to do that is to get a rake or a hoe to help clean out part of that obstruction.
Why not reach in and just scoop it out by hand?
Well, one of the reasons is that if you have a rake, it helps reduce the strain on your back when you're reaching to remove that obstruction. The other thing you want to concern yourself with is the possible critters that live in the pond, particularly snakes and alligators, and I've even seen some snapper turtles too. We found that mostly if you go into an area that is inhabited by those type of wildlife, that you need to take it slow and easy so they have a way to escape when they see you coming.
Is that all we need to do?
That's one of the first things you need to do by looking at the structure. One of the other things you need to do is look at the pond banks itself. Make sure that there's no erosion on the pond banks. One of the problems with the erosion is that it can cause a gully to wash through there and cause major erosion down the road, which would be quite costly. One of the examples of the pond banks is that it helps absorb the water once it comes down to the pond and helps slow down the water before it gets to the pond. The other thing you want to concern yourself with is removing the grass clippings and leaves and other type of trash from the pond bottom itself. The reason why this is important is because the absorption on the pond bottom is being impeded by that trash layer, leaves, or grass clippings. Once you remove the grass clippings and trash and leaves from the pond bottom, it helps the pond and its effectiveness quite a bit.
Another common thing we see is people filling in swales, thinking they're low spots on their property. A swale traps the water from the land and filters it through the ground before it reaches the wetland or the pond. A berm is a small hump on the side of the swale that holds the water in the swale while it seeps into the ground. It's important to leave these areas as they're built so that your property doesn't get flooded and the stormwater is properly treated.
Also, your property may have a conservation easement or buffer area. Most activities are restricted in this area. Leave the natural vegetation alone, and planting non-native plants is discouraged because they may take over the area. There's also no mowing, and construction of any type is discouraged, such as sheds and fences and even children's playhouses. These areas, most of these areas are intended for a buffer between development and wetlands.
One of the things you need to watch for in the filtration type system is inspecting the perforated pipe once it bleeds out the treatment volume in the pond. One time to do this would be a couple days after a rain to make sure that it's flowing properly and there's no obstructions at all. One of the pipes you need to really look for is the pipe that leaves the structure and goes out either to a ditch or a receiving water body to make sure there's no obstructions in that pipe.
Sounds like the key to most of this is just good old common sense.
That's right.
Cindy, what about for a wet detention system? Can I just plant grass and mow right down to the water line so that it's nice and neat?
Yes, that is an option, but another option would be to use natural, native wetland plants to make your ponds look more natural. And this also aids in stormwater treatment.
The plants that Cindy's talking about are native to Florida, and they can be found in any of your plant nurseries.
What are some of those plants? Are some better than others?
Yes, they are. The plants that you really want to stay away from are water hyacinths, hydrilla, cattails, and especially elephant ears along the pond bank.
Some more desirable plants would be cordgrass, soft rush, soft stem bulrush, golden canna, pickerel weed, and duck potato. Here's duck potato right here, and here's pickerel weed.
Some of the taller vegetation, if you want to plant along the side banks, would be trees, such as bald cypress, sweet bay magnolia, loblolly bay, or river birch. But once again, stay away from those elephant ears.
So it sounds like there are really a lot of possibilities available if I want to landscape my wet detention system.
That's right. You can enjoy designing your landscape and enjoy it year after year as it grows. An important thing to remember, though, is the water level of your pond, and make sure that you plant the right plant in the right place.
That's a good point. Cindy, Lee, Jill, thanks a lot for the tips.
Sure.
So the bottom line is understanding what stormwater system you have, how it works, and how it needs to be maintained. The four types of systems are wet detention, or wet ponds that always have a specific level of water in them and then provide temporary storage of runoff, which is slowly released after it rains. Retention, which is usually a dry pond that holds or retains water for 72 hours or less and is dry between rainfall events. Swales, which are similar to ditches, but they're wider than they are deep and have sloped sides that are vegetated to prevent erosion. And filtration, which treats runoff through a combination of percolation and filtration through a filter medium, such as sand or cloth. These are found in some older developments and are the most difficult to maintain. Maintaining your system should include a few simple steps. The first is a thorough inspection of all pipes and inlet and outlet structures to make sure they're not damaged or blocked, and that there are no obstructions to the water flow. Clean out trash, tree branches, leaves, or any debris that would restrict water movement using a long-handled rake. You encounter an animal, so move slowly and deliberately, giving it plenty of room to escape, which it will. Third, check for erosion on side slopes and do any necessary repairs. And finally, remove any leaves, grass clippings, sticks, and mounds of dirt or sand from swales or retention and filtration systems' dry ponds. If you plan on landscaping around your stormwater system, know what plants to use and those to avoid. Remember, stormwater systems are designed to protect property owners from flooding and to trap pollutants before they get into our waterways. It's your responsibility to make sure your stormwater system is operating properly. Take the time to check it and perform the necessary maintenance. If you're not sure if the system is operating properly, call the Water Management District. Our scientists and engineers can help you in getting the job done right, so our lakes, rivers, and bays stay clean, and we all stay dry. Thanks for watching.